And welcome to Sihasin Hour. Thanks for joining us today. We took a break last week, and we rebroadcast a previous episode of Sihasin Hour. But we're here this week with our special guest Tyrone Thompson, and we want to talk about food security and food sovereignty, and how we're able to establish that within our communities through farming and through gardening, and just growing our own crops and subsisting off of those. So we have a great discussion today, and my name is Mahayo Manus. I'm the public information director. I'm the public relations director with the Navajo and Hopi Families COVID-19 Relief Fund. Looks like our guest dropped out, maybe, but he should be back. Tyrone, if you could turn on your camera, that would be great, because when you turn it off, it seems like I lost my guest. But anyways, thanks. Appreciate you being here. I'm gonna go ahead and let Tyrone introduce himself. So Tyrone, go ahead and let us know a little bit about who you are.
Yate shade na Ginny Ishlo na case Ginny Bashin out of touchy dash shade na case Ginny dash another. So yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Tyrone Thompson. I'm the owner and operator of Chishie Farms, and we're located in Loop, Arizona, on the southwest portion of Navajo Nation.
Awesome, thanks. And yeah, Loop, that's a great area. It's actually the area where my wife is from. So I do have an affinity for Loop, and I know some of her relatives have been participating in some of the farming that takes place up there. But Tyrone, can you tell us a little bit about Chishie Farms and maybe North Loop Farms, or if it's just Chishie Farms, and how you're involved in that particular project or farming initiative?
So yeah, Chishie Farms was incorporated about 2 years ago as an LLC. Um, we have dedicated ourselves, our lives, and the way we live to show people and model how to um, garden, also live sustainably, while making gardening, farming economically viable for our families. So there's a number of things that we do here, from building hoop houses, growing food, um, growing seedlings, selling seedlings. We're at two farmers markets, and we sell to one restaurant on a weekly basis. So and yeah, we consult with farms and gardens across Navajo Nation. We've built over 50 to 60 hoop houses in our region. So we're now building a cooperative, Dok Osli agricultural co-op, to kind of help build the capacity amongst our farmers in our area to get them, not only to get them back to growing, to grow a variety of other crops. Um, we're known for growing our traditional crops like our corn, melon, squash, beans, and what have you. But with these very high winds and hotter summers, and no water, it's hard to grow things. So to be able to equip folks with tools like hoop houses and greenhouses is
Mhm.
where we found ourselves being beneficial to our community, and sharing our knowledge around growing. So we're in a place where we're growing year round. We have a few employees, and yeah, that's a little bit about us. And we work with what we call the sister farms in our area,
Mm.
which are the larger farm plots. Chishie Farms is more or less our backyard garden, and then our outreach and consulting business. But we do farm the Little Colorado River. We farm at Beaver Farm. It's located near Grand Falls.
Mm.
There's also North Loop Family Farms. There's Sand Springs Farms. There's Cameron Farms, Black Falls Farms, and
Okay.
we're trying to get Birch Springs Farms up and going again. So
Cool.
we do have proposals in to the Navajo Nation, for these next upcoming ARPA funding. And
Mhm.
so if that goes through, we have large plans on doing large amounts of pasture, for the animals, as well as more hoop houses, more infrastructure for a lot of our farmers and things that they need. But along those needs, we're finding um, pack wash stations, walk-in coolers. We're talking mobile refrigeration units,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of our folks live in rural areas, as you know, and we don't have, refrigeration, we don't have electricity. So we want to equip our farmers and gardeners with, solar electricity, refrigeration,
Mm-hmm.
running water to the best of our ability that we can.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a little bit about us.
Oh, that's really interesting. I think that that's really it's great to hear that there's so many farms, and all of those farms that you mentioned, they do seem to be kind of in that area of Loop, Bird Springs, Cameron, Sand Springs, kind of in that area. So in terms of the individual farms, are those all kind of attended to um by certain groups of people, or are those farms kind of overseen by you and Chishie Farms as well?
They're overseen more or less by the groups of people. Again, we do our best to perform workshops and build capacity amongst those farmers. So in the past, we've been able to actually certify organic gardeners through different programs, like Northland Pioneer College teaming up with workforce development, to where our organic gardeners got a certificate as well as a stipend to come to our classes and do a whole 9-month course. And I really see that beneficial in recipients of people wanting some of these hoop houses, because a
Mhm.
lot of people say, yeah, it's really nice, we want to get a hoop house, but once we get it, we start planting things in there that we would normally not plant in a hoop house. I think those of us that know how to utilize them, we think of them as precious real estate.
Wow.
um, so I think there's a lot of education that needs to happen,
Mhm.
more programs that could be supporting some of these initiatives that are going on.
Okay.
Some of the colleges, possibly could replicate some of the programs that we've run.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's all kinds of opportunity. I think there's tons of challenges, but those are where the opportunities are created, and I think that's what our farm has been able to model and show people. That we're able to grow our own food.
Mhm.
Um, we have a large land base out here. We're sitting on some of the largest bodies of fresh water, and we have high unemployment rates. So we do put those pieces together, and we can solve a huge part of the problem that we're seeing out here with food sovereignty and food security. We have the potential of being the breadbasket of northern Arizona in my eyes, and as well as protecting our water, as we're talking about food, because agriculture is probably the number one activity that we can do that shows that we're utilizing our water. As we've been told before, we don't use it, we lose it. So
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
at North Loop Family Farms, we have one of the largest solar arrays on. It is the largest solar array on Navajo that is pumping water for irrigation, and so we pump
Wow.
360 gallons a minute.
Wow.
And we also have a meter on there. So the first year, we were able to show that we use over 5 million gallons of water, and that's not only for the farm there, but that's also shared with Solana Lake Water Users Association, which is, so the water is pumped up from North Loop about 15 miles up to Chilani Lake, to where the water users are using it as a tool to move the cattle around, which I think they're calling the RMUs, the range management units, which is another unique model to revitalize some of those the vegetation out on in Chilani Lake area.
Wow, that's really that's awesome that you guys are using the solar arrays to kind of pump irrigation towards the farms and to other users. And that sounds like how many gallons did you say per minute? 356 or something like that? I mean, that's a lot of water.
300, yes, 360, yes, sir.
Wow. And I think that that's important too, to also just let our viewers know, and just the fact that they say that we don't use our water, and the way that you're able to kind of harness that in a dynamic way to kind of fill the gaps in terms of maybe what we're not seeing in terms of rainwater to our rainfall to help the fields or to irrigate the fields. And so just maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, just in terms of the farms that you help with. I mean, I know that in the region we're doing a lot of dry farming because of the rainfall that we get per year. It seems like more and more in the past years we've gotten less and less. And as you have said, this year it's been so windy and dry thus far. So how is it that how are you using those factors to kind of plan for some of the farming that you're undertaking this season?
Um, well, I think, we are on some of the other farms, we're going towards some of those sustainable models, like getting more solar on the ground,
Hmm.
um, and getting away from some of the diesel generators that we're using to pump water, because diesel's just gone up that much more.
Hmm.
We just got back from the Tohono O'odham Nation, to where folks are not planting alfalfa, not planting some of the grasses, because it 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 requires 24/7 pumping water, and they just can't afford it. So I
Hmm.
think, moving towards solar and um, utilizing some of our drought tolerant crops and varieties, where we're not constantly watering but giving them just enough. At Chishie Farms, we do not have running water, so we haul all of our water, and that's been a challenge again with all of these rising gas prices.
Mm.
Um, so it's kind of a balancing act that we play, and we struggle with. But
Mhm.
I've been watching, um, just for instance, eggs in the last couple of weeks, they've been off the shelves. Nobody's
Mhm.
finding eggs, and this year we're growing, 50 something birds laying, uh, egg layers.
Mhm.
So I think, our backyard gardens, our farms are able to sustain things that
Mhm.
doesn't require us to go travel 50 miles, 100 miles, 200 miles round trip. And,
Mhm.
and when we're doing that, we're contributing to that carbon footprint,
Mhm.
um, of climate change. So by gardening and farming in our backyards, we help reduce um, some of that. And as Navajo, Hopi, Apache people, we should be leading the way in some of these green initiatives, I believe.
Awesome. Um, Maybe you can also talk about some of the crops that you grow that might have shorter growing seasons, and how you kind of utilize those within your farms. Are you planning things that where you might be able to harvest them a little bit earlier, and then kind of some other crops that might take longer in terms of the season, and also maybe in terms of hoop houses. I've heard that the hoop house uh, can extend the growing season in terms of maybe some of the things that are able to be grown in the hoop house because of how it's resistant to certain maybe temperature fluctuations and such. But you know how are we and you able to utilize each of these types of farming, like hoop housing and regular planting or farming the land, and to kind of maybe offset the timing of crops and harvesting in a season?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So we're at a place now again where we're growing year round, and we're harvesting year round. So
Wow.
I'm harvesting lettuce out of my ears right now. Squash blossoms are going crazy.
Wow.
Um, And, I can grow kale, Swiss chard, all those different types of crops year round, garlic. And so
Mhm.
we're at a place now where we're using these hoop houses as well as our passive solar greenhouse. We also have a geodesic dome to where we're
Mhm.
growing fish. We're using hydroponics, aquaponics to show how you can use less water than conventional agriculture.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, so there's the lettuces, radishes, those types of crops. We can grow those in about 30 to 45 days, depending on the time of the year. And then I can grow microgreens in 10 to 15 days. So I can grow nutrient dense crops in really fast. And that's one of our tricks for our market gardening, and showing the economics behind farming and gardening. Because yeah, we do grow our corn and our squashes, and they do take a lot longer. And our chilies, they take a whole season of growing, and we're only harvesting those, maybe a couple times out of the year. Compared to if I'm growing lettuce and I'm planting, establishing beds or establishing these houses on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis, then I'm harvesting on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis, and I'm getting a paycheck on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis as well.
Awesome.
And
Awesome.
so it's just plugging all the pieces of the puzzle together. I think where we're at now is, and I've been talking about this for some time, is food literacy. Um, and I can grow all of these high nutrient dense food, but do our people know how to use them, eat them? Do we have a taste for them? Can we adopt these, seeds and these foods as our own, and welcome them into our homes? Because it seems like, I do grow a lot of nutrient dense crops like kale, which is considered a superfood. I've done quinoa and different things in the past, and I've had, some of our youth compost those things if I'm not around. um, and I've asked them, why are we growing these things? These are some really good foods for us. And so I think the food literacy portion is very important. That's why for me, I'm really into what the youth want to grow. So I get into a lot of berries, blackberries, strawberries, um, grapes, and then we want to incorporate those into, healthy smoothies. So I can sneak some kale into their strawberry banana smoothie, and they'll in turn get some of those, good vitamins, as well as, some of our meat eaters. How do we incorporate, some good, really good salads,
Mhm.
healthy dressings, things of that nature onto our palates.
Mhm.
um, and it's not something that is foreign to us, as Navajo and indigenous people. We're a large part of our diets were plants, and we just need to go back and remember who we are and where we're coming from. um, it seems like it's just been, over the past few decades, to where our diets have been changing, and our fast food is now McDonald's instead of those little jackrabbits out in the field.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting too. Yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, even some of my grandparents have talked about how when they were younger, their diet was mainly vegetables, corn and other types of squash, other types of vegetables, but that meat was only something that they would have, on special occasions, or just less frequently than we see it now. I mean, nowadays it seems like a lot of people feel like they have to have, meat all the time, and in their diet, which I think in certain ways, I mean, it takes a lot more resources to ranch, or to get, that meat to the table, when we could be utilizing a lot of our efforts to just farming more, and growing more vegetables. In regards to the farms that you're working with, I just wanted to see if you might be able to talk a little bit about maybe some of the types of crops. And you did mention it, you're growing squash and corn and chilies. And then also you talked about within the hoop houses, growing things like kale and Swiss chard and some of those kinds of things. But um, what are some of the indigenous crops that you're growing, like in terms of farming? Do you try to mainly use corn that's, you know, indigenous to our area? Are you able to have access to those types of seeds, and even like chilies and squash that you're growing? Like, are you able to, you know, like utilize indigenous types of seeds and crops
Y-
within the farms?
Yes, absolutely. I grow, you know, our white corn and our blue corn, and then naizibitsedo, chigi. We use all of those ones that are, you know, the heirloom corn squashes that are adapted and acclimated to this region. So they do really well, you know, even with these high winds, they stand up against them, and then they still really they're really good producers. Um,
Cool.
we were also gifted the Bears Ears potatoes last
Mhm.
year. So we are growing those varieties. So they're finding these old potatoes at some of the Anasazi sites. And so they're thinking, you know, they're ancient potatoes. They're really small potato, but
Mhm.
they have more than the nutrients. Again, they have more than your new potato. I would say your russet potato or your red potato. Um, so yeah, we do. I think that is probably one of the most important things as we go forward is taking care of our seeds, making sure that we have homes for them, making sure that the stories, you know, continue with them, that they continue in our ceremonies, um, and this way of life is, you know, preserved. And you know, I talked about this in Tohono O'odham, but our ingredients and our culture and our teachings, our songs, they're not in their textbooks. Yeah, they're in these places and spaces that we create and that we have that are given to us. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that's where a lot of the teachings take place. And so I think it's really important that we have and we create these spaces, especially for our youth to engage with, you know, the elders who we hold on to this knowledge and really honor them and honor our ancestors in that way.
Awesome. Yeah, is the gathering that you mentioned that took place in Tohono O'odham, is that the Native Foodways Summit? Is
Yeah,
that what happened
yeah, yeah,
recently? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that I went to something that was similar, and it was maybe almost 8 or 9 years back, and it was wonderful to go down there and to just to hear about their types of agriculture, their planning season. I mean, down in southern Arizona, you know, you get warm temps all year round, so it does seem like they're in a constant cycle of planting different types of crops. But I always enjoyed some of their foods that they prepared, like choya buds. You know, we don't really, at least I don't really see a lot of those around here in Navajo. But just the first time I saw it, I thought, wow, that's like, it looks like the I mean, it's cactus, but it looked like it. And so, but the way that they prepared it was awesome, and that's what I think is great. You know, just in terms of being able to go down to those types of summits and gatherings and learn about other types of agriculture, learn about different methodology in terms of how they think about farming. It does seem like, you know, in a lot of our native cultures, you know, it's integral in terms of the lifestyle. It's integral in terms of how we look at even religion or songs or the way that you know, it's more holistic in terms of how native people look at their gardening. It's not just, oh well, you know, I'm going to go out and plant this and, you know, wait for 90 days or whatever. There seems to be a whole methodology or aesthetic that is ingrained in culture when we look at farming. And I think that that's wonderful. I also can see that, of course, here in Navajo as well too. I mean, a lot of our farmers, you know, have have been doing it for generations, farming plots for generations, working with their families in on their fields, for not just not just 10 years, but maybe 50 years, way longer than that. So has have you always been a farmer? Is this something that you've experienced with your family? Is this something that you learned outside of that kind of environment?
I participated, or we, farmed a little as a kid, and then I moved around a lot. So we were more toward urban Indians, I would say. I was a marble and granite fabricator by trade for several years, um, before I got back into agriculture, or even got into agriculture. And I got into agriculture in the early 2000s with my late mentor. His name was Justin Woolley, out of Loop. And that's when North Loop Family Farms was kind of dormant and there's nothing happening there. And we were able to open the door, so to speak, with NAU diabetes prevention program. And that kind of is what got me going, learning about some of the problems that we have out here related to food, the food related illnesses. I served as a food corp service member at the Star School for a couple of years, and that really opened my eyes again to what was going on with the whole food system. And to know that we are considered, a food desert here on Navajo, again, with folks having to drive several 100 miles away to get their some fresh produce, is where I kind of started, and just wanting to help people. I working around the farms, you start seeing the needs of people, and how people are hauling water consistently, don't have electricity. And so I learned a little bit about solar, solar water pumping, and kind of just do our part to help folks as we can.
Mhm.
As we were learning with the schools, we would purchase small greenhouse kits and give them out to families as part of these garden initiatives. But
Mhm.
then I would watch these little hoop houses or greenhouses get blown away in some of these high winds. And so that's kind of where we got the idea of getting into this as a business, just because we saw a need.
Mhm.
Um, and I got to work around nonprofits and learn about grants. And one of the things that Justin always taught me was, in the Navajo, "sha" is a bad word. "Sha'nde," do it for me. And I don't want to talk bad about grants, because a lot of my work still is funded by these grants, through different organizations. But for me, it just seemed like, that was me saying "sha" all the time when we're looking for a grant, or this funding runs out of this grant, then we're going to just let all the plants die, or how does that work? Because it didn't seem like it was sustaining itself to me.
Mhm.
um, and now, as I live this way of life, I'm proving that it can be a sustainable way of living.
Mhm.
um, and that's what we really want to model and share with indigenous people across the way.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds great. Um, One thing I wanted to touch on really quickly as well too is hoop housing. I mean, hoop houses and the hoop house kinds of workshops and projects that seem to be taking place. I'm sure that they've been taking place, throughout the years, but I'm just kind of noticing them a little bit more recently. Within our own organization and up in Monument Valley, our community center there, they're currently building a hoop house at that particular community center, so they can start to implement more of gardening initiatives, and to have something that they can utilize for the community. to show them, certain different aspects of planting and just getting the community involved. And I do see that, well, at least on your Facebook page, I see that you've promoted some of those kinds of hoop house projects. Is that are those kinds of initiatives things that you feel might be you know not the future of farming, but something that kind of heightens or supplements ways that people can be involved in agriculture?
I think so. Again, I see them as a huge tool to be able to grow different types of crops that we're not usually able to get away with growing out here. The other thing that we have here at the at Chishie Farms is we have a passive solar greenhouse that is attached to our hogan, which allows us to grow thousands of seedlings a year, um, which which I don't have to go out and buy my seedlings. It's kind of that's expensive.
Yeah.
And then it also brings it's a revenue generator where I'm at farmers markets selling these seedlings on a weekly basis, and it's generating some revenue.
Cool.
So from there they go into a hoop house that is just covered in shade. It's shade
Mhm.
fabric, and the reasoning is those seedlings that go through a process called hardening off. So they go into a shade house to where they're feeling some of those outside temperatures, those low temperatures at night, and then the high temperatures during the day. And so
Mhm.
they're not going directly into the wind or directly into the scorching sun, but they're going into a place to where they can get their strength before they actually go out into the garden. So when we get out to these markets, we're getting really good results and really good feedback from our customers and our farmers and our gardeners, because our seedlings are just so resilient and strong. They do really well because of this system that we have in place. So so the reason why I'm sharing this is because there's several different ways that we utilize these hoop houses. That being one of them. That's being kind of a seedling starting area. The other ways that we use them is covering them with plastic and shade, and so that
Mhm.
would allow you to grow year round. Like it would allow you to grow cool weather crops throughout the winter.
Mhm.
um, and then we're also covering them with just shade cloth.
Mhm.
The benefits of that is about three seasons out of the year of being able to grow in spring, summer, and fall, and really being protected again from those elements of those high winds. It seems like we're getting more and more of those dust devils
Mhm.
this year. We're seeing a lot more of those, and so when you have sensitive plants, those things will just tear them up, and they'll knock
Oh,
your plants
wow.
down. So these hoop houses are really a huge tool. So I absolutely think that going into the future that we utilize innovative ways, even like hydroponics and aquaponics. Show our kids. This could be teaching tools. All of our STEM um,
Mhm.
language, culture, math. It's all incorporated into gardening too. So I think it needs to be. We need to start these in the schools, so we're by the time we're up at the college level, that we have people that are interested in coming back and pursuing some of these agricultural activities, because there's only one of me, and I need a team, and we need this all across the nation. We need to rebuild our nations. We need to redesign our communities in a way that can sustain ourselves. I don't see one of our communities with an orchard, a blooming orchard. I see some in Hopi, and
Mhm.
I see, some of the old orchards, old trees that some of their grandparents planted them. Somebody was thinking about them, way
Mhm.
back. And that's the way we need to think about our future generations and our kids. What is the landscape going to look like for them? Are we going to leave it an empty landscape, or are we going to have, food forests that
Mhm.
are able to sustain ourselves? So
Mhm.
yeah, I think even with the way that we have our communities, again, the way that they're designed, I don't want to knock NHA, but it doesn't seem like they are thinking of a sustainable communities. The way that they build is definitely not sustainable. In our
Mhm.
communities, they're putting up these module homes. which
Mhm.
start depreciating as soon as you get them out the door and onto a trailer. They're already falling apart. So I
Mhm.
think we need to really think the thought through and share some of this with the leadership. Um, yeah,
Those are great thoughts and great insights. You really articulated that in a wonderful way in terms of thinking about imparting this kind of a teaching into our generations so that they can build sustainably and building sustainably, just not just in looking at houses, but how we look at our communities. And I think that there should be ways that we're incorporating this into the curriculum of our education system so that our younger kids are exposed to it. Some might not have access to a field. Um, and I know when I was in high school, we had a horticulture, and they had a little greenhouse, and we were able to go in there and learn some things about planting. But I think that when a student or a young person can kind of follow it through from beginning to end and even have something tangible like a tomato or just something that has been harvested, it really makes them feel like and know that they can do this, and do it on their own. And so I do think that that's super important. And some of the things that you had said earlier about how, the region that we live in, it could be the breadbasket of our state, of our nation, and at least for the Navajo Nation, being able to harvest, or plant and harvest, huge crops, is something that we need to kind of realize in terms of addressing food security. I think that a lot of times we look at farming and we just think about things like, NAPI, and we see how they're utilizing acres and acres of land, and they're producing beans and corn and processing those kinds of things. But that's just one area of the Navajo Nation. We should have 10 nappies across the Navajo Nation, utilizing all of our lands to start to build inventories of food, and to support our communities. During the pandemic, we had such a we addressed food security in ways that it was detrimental to our communities. A lot of people went without and needed direct relief in many ways. But if we were able to kind of strengthen those kinds of teachings ahead of time, and have been able to subsist off of at least certain marginal aspects of harvesting and inventorying our harvest, or storing food, that would really be great. And just, I think the other thing, like you've been talking about, these foods are so rich in nutrients and vitamins, and they're way more healthier for us than going to the store and even getting food from Safeway or Bash's. I mean, it seems like when you go to the store, you have to look for organic foods and different types of foods. I think that I love kale, and I love chard, and those kinds of darker, leafier greens. I think those are great to incorporate into our diets. But a lot of times people think of a salad and they just go straight for like iceberg or something like that. That doesn't, it's not as rich in nutrients. So just kind of going off there, but I think that there was a whole lot that you had put together in some of those thoughts that you put forward, and those are things that we need to build on within our communities. So I really do appreciate that. I just kind of wanted to ask real quickly, did the pandemic affect your farming at all, or your any of the projects that you had been undertaking at that time?
it really, the pandemic really highlighted the importance of what we're doing. We got a lot of publicity around what we're doing. I started doing tutorials on how to do, container gardens, how to start seedlings, how to do basic things around the garden, while people were at home enclosed, using their window sills.
Mhm.
We were, we were awarded a large amount of funding through ARPA to
Mhm.
I employed over 20 people in our region from Cameron to Greasewood, farmers, and we went to work. We set up several large hoop houses, fed lots of people, butchered several animals, and just we were working nonstop during some of those times. So it really boosted what we were doing. Some of the publicity that we got were we were able to get our geodesic dome donated from a group out of Colorado. Um, so that again, it just it seemed like it really highlighted what we were doing. We were able to install solar here at Chishie Farms. To
Yeah.
what that enabled us to do was build a pack wash station. So I have a bubbler where I bubble all my greens after I harvest them. So it kind of bubbles, agitates any of the maybe insects or dirt debris that might be on them. From
Mhm.
there, it goes into an industrial salad spinner, which we converted a washing machine into a salad spinner, and then it goes onto a
Cool.
drying rack. Um, and from there, off the drying rack, it goes right into a walk-in cooler that is operated by a window cooler and a little guy called the Cool Bot. And
Wow.
so it's insulated, and that's where I keep all my greens. And in that process, the greens they stayed nice and crunchy and fresh. And right now I'm working on the mobile refrigeration truck, so we're able to map again, like you were saying, map all of these farms and gardens out, and then start kind of a route of picking up and delivering produce to where we need. So essentially, Chishie Farms is turning into a food hub here on the southwest portion of Navajo, to where we're able to store
Wow.
food and be able to distribute from here. The next place that we'll be setting this up at is Ganado.
Mhm.
So at Felix's place.
Mhm.
Um, I'm sorry, I have
Mhm.
a brain fart there.
Uh,
But yeah. Anyway, I think these are very important things that are needed, especially when we start getting to that place of where we're growing enough food. Um, it's interesting that you talk about Nappy because Nappy's a large producer on Navajo, but that they're I wouldn't say the problem, but they're part of our broken food system. As we grow the food here on Navajo, they take those potatoes off to Frito Lay, and they take
mhm.
those produce off of Navajo. It's the same with our
Mhm.
livestock and our beef. You
Mhm.
have this good grass-fed beef that we grow out here on Navajo. Not that I have cattle, but
Yeah.
I see people take them to Sun Valley on Wednesdays, and they get a paycheck for the grass-fed beef, and then they take that paycheck, the money, to Safeway, and then they go buy beef or their meat from somewhere else, and they don't know where it's coming from. They don't know what's in it. They don't know,
Mhm.
all of these different things. It's the same with all of the animals, I think, like the chickens and the pork, and those are all things that we could take care of here. So
Yeah.
that's another big need that is here on Navajo is how do we certify ourselves to be able to process all of these things and
Yeah.
keep them here on Navajo rather than taking them out and feeding other people where they're making, they're probably making a killing on what we're growing out here. And then they give
Yeah.
us guineas for whatever is left. So those are just part of a broken food system that I see that we need to tend to,
Mhm.
um, and not only for ourselves, but for the land and for our future generations as well.
Mhm.
Because utilizing these regenerative practices, it's really beneficial for our land, our health, and again, security and sovereignty for our people and for our youth, and going forward into the future.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for coming on and being a guest. Just wanted to kind of touch on one of the things that you had just said, and we I went to the Reservation Economics Summit this year, and they had Heather Dawn Thompson from the USDA talk about food sovereignty, but just in terms of how you were how you had talked about Nappy in terms of all of those potatoes and them going to like Frito-Lay or to, you know, getting outsourced off of the reservation or going off of the reservation. Those are real issues that we face here on the, you know, on the Navajo Nation and probably other Native nations, but we're not processing our meats, or, you know, we're not processing our vegetables to be used or recirculated within our communities, and that seems to be a real problem. And it does seem like in some of those situations, you know, it's the investment into maybe the machinery or the equipment that could be used to process these things to keep them in our communities that we need to invest in. And those are things that, you know, our government through our ARPA funds should be supporting, you know, our local business entrepreneurs to support this kind of a system. Otherwise, like you kind of alluded to, you know, we produce all of this, we harvest these vegetables and they're not utilized within our communities. It does sound like you're taking some steps to address those things in terms of how you were talking about being able to process some of your greens and keep them cool, and having mobile cooling units, things like that. I think that those are really important ideas that other farmers and agriculturalists should, you know, should be aware of and start to utilize themselves as well. But we're at the top of the hour, and I really appreciate you coming on and being a guest. I know it was last minute, but we've always wanted to have you come on and just participate in Sihasin Hour and talk about Chishie Farms and the initiatives that you're undertaking. Do you have any maybe final words or last words you might want to just you know, address before we close out here?
I just want to thank you for having me. You know, another mentor, his name was James Peshikai. He always used to say, you know, I belong to my people in their hearts and their mind, not in their pocketbooks. And I sincerely believe that when we go back to the cornfields, you know, it really establishes not only within our communities, but again with Mother Nature, with the land, the water, and it just brings us back full circle when we go back to the cornfields. And it's really near and dear to my heart. So I appreciate everything that you guys do, and however we can help going forward, just feel free to ask.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyrone, and maybe sometime we can bring you back again and just maybe talk about another aspect, or maybe at the end of our harvest harvest season, we might be able to highlight some of our veggies and produce. But appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk again. Hagon.
Diga, yeah.